The backlash against the world's biggest social media companies is gathering pace as Australia Today put the big unfriendly giants on notice.
We don't want this content to become normalized. We know that 71% of Australian teenagers are coming across seriously harmful content.
Australia's internet watchdog today issuing legal notices to Google, Meta, X, WhatsApp, Telegram and Reddit, giving them 49 days to explain how they're combating terrorist and violent extremist content on their platforms, with penalties worth tens of millions if they fail to act.
To take you through a list, I mean, it's everything from beheadings, kidnappings, rapes, shootings. Unfortunately, some of this most violent content you cannot unsee.
This is still the Commissioner in some ways playing nice. And then if they don't like the answer, I suppose the stick comes out.
The worst offender, Telegram, followed by Google's YouTube.
I know that I come home from work and I sometimes see my twins watching endless loops of YouTube videos. You wouldn't want your child coming across a beheading video or really distressing pictures of children killed in conflict.
Last week, a UK study found viewing violent material online is now inevitable and unavoidable for children who are first seeing this content in primary school.
It is a huge worry, especially now TikTok and everything, what they can see.
Definitely they've seen things that are scary and come up and been a bit upset by what they've seen. It's a nightmare, to be honest.
Today's crackdown is just the latest in the global effort to bring social media giants into line. US lawmakers voting to ban TikTok over data and misinformation concerns.
Today we take a stand against the Chinese Communist Party and their efforts to turn content creators in America into foot soldiers.
Stop the ban. I'm an 18-year-old girl in Michigan. What am I going to do for China? Take my information. I don't care.
And Australia under pressure to follow suit.
TikTok is a bad faith actor. It is a risk to our democracy. It's a risk to our national security.
But as the world's social media giants continue to dodge regulatory nets, can we keep big tech in check?
Frances Haugen is a former Facebook worker turned whistleblower who leaked thousands of damaging confidential documents and told the US Congress that Facebook puts profits over safety. Frances, it's tens of millions of dollars in penalties for companies that make tens of billions. What do you make of Australia's action today? Will it achieve anything?
So Australia is working, so we have to remember, Australia was leading the world a few years ago as the first country to give powers to a regulator to ask questions like, hey, we need you to outline what you're doing to stop terrorism and extreme violent content on these platforms. That was revolutionary a few years ago. Unfortunately, other countries have moved forward in ways that are more comprehensive. The regulator is focusing right now on these actions, which, as you pointed out, might only lead to tens of millions of dollars in fines for companies that make tens of billions of dollars of profit, because the scope of the law needs to evolve and change. We need to have laws that focus on transparency, on disclosure. For example, right now, Australians don't have a right to know even what the harms these companies know about their own products. That's what a state-of-the-art code would look like, and I hope Australia considers it as the codes are being reevaluated.
Frances, Facebook has 3 billion users now.
More than 3.
Do we even have the technology to properly moderate such a vast amount of information?
So even the framing of that question presumes a story that big tech has taught us. Over the years, they've said the only way we can have safety is by picking and choosing what are the bad pieces of content and taking down the bad ones. You're totally right. That approach does not scale to 3 billion users who speak 4,000 to 5,000 languages. What does scale, though, is things like requiring them to be transparent about the harms they know about, to have to disclose publicly what they're doing to moderate those harms, because that counterweights the incentives that currently are leading them to underinvest in safety. When we have laws that give Australians the right to know what's happening on these platforms, we'll get safer platforms.
I just don't know that that's what will happen, Frances. Like, even if people know, we see this when people get warned about their data being used for nefarious ends or whatever. And what they do is they go, oh, OK, and then they keep clicking and they keep scrolling. Like, its hooks are in our brains. That's the way it works.
But I'll give you an example. Right now, advertisers are fueling these companies. Every one of the big tech companies is advertiser funded. But right now, advertisers can't use that power of the purse to say, hey, we noticed bullying is a really big problem. we've noticed violent extremism as a problem. But right now, because they can't see if their actions have an effect, they just have to take the word of the companies of, like, we solved the problem, they don't organize boycotts. And so transparency can give power to divestment campaigns, advertisers, even people just leaving the platform because now they actually know.
But Frances, advertisers are companies and they are profit and loss. So what's the incentive for them to hold the social media companies to a higher standard?
So one of the things that's been interesting for me about traveling around Australia these last few weeks is having conversations about how social media is perceived here versus, say, in the United States. One of the things that I've been really surprised on is the conversations around, say, children's safety have not branched out as far as they have in the U.S. Like in the U.S., there's a lot more focus on things like sleep deprivation, on attention spans, on anxiety, depression. Imagine a world where parents had concrete data to know that it wasn't their fault. Like, it wasn't that they were a bad parent and their kid was suffering in isolation. It was the platform that was making design choices that were making these problems worse. Parents have the ability to pressure governments, pressure advertisers, pressure pension funds to say, hey, we can change. And in the US, the thing that changed things like drunk driving or even tobacco was groups like parents' groups standing up and demanding more.
Frances is speaking on social media and AI safety at the University of Melbourne this Thursday. For more info about the event, you can visit our website. Frances, thanks for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.